Hello friends. During the war in Ukraine, Russia actively attacked and invaded the other country, causing the deaths of many civilians and adversely affecting the global economy. Of course, Russia is at fault, but is there anything wrong with the West? Is America at fault? Let's find out together. Ukraine has been independent since 1991, and since then the country has been divided into pro-Russian and pro-American factions. Because it is located in a very special position that can be considered a key point of Russia, so if Ukraine officially tilts to the west, Russia will feel threatened and can never leave it alone. It is because of that special position that Russia forced Ukraine to be neutral, or rather, Russia told Ukraine, "You can follow me or not follow me, but if you love America, you will die with me." Therefore, Ukraine has always maintained a neutral position in diplomacy, and they have lived peacefully for many years. The United States and NATO both know about Russia's whispers of love for Ukraine, and they know that letting Ukraine fall for them will surely bring disaster to this girl, but even so, the United States still turns on the green light for Ukraine in 2008. Specifically, at the Bucharest summit of NATO, the Bush administration announced that Ukraine and Georgia will become members. Russia heard this was immediately extremely indignant. Russian President Putin said, "If Ukraine joins NATO, it will do so without Crimea and the eastern regions." After listening, America remained silent and did not react. By February 2014, a coup by the pro-Western faction was successful. The pro-Russian president had to flee the country. To warn the West, Russia quickly sent troops to occupy Crimea and support the rebel Donbas region, demanding to overthrow the newly established pro-American government. The confrontation between the US and Russia has now begun to tense. But if the US does not continue to give the green light, Ukraine will still be temporarily peaceful, at least except for the breakaway region. However, the US came to Ukraine and said, "I will make you strong." That was in 2017. The US sold defensive weapons to Ukraine. Other NATO countries also shipped weapons to Ukraine, trains the armed forces, and allows the country to participate in joint air and naval exercises. In July 2021, Ukraine and the United States co-organized a large naval exercise in the Black Sea region with the participation of navies of 32 countries. This move can be seen as provoking Russia, further straining an almost broken relationship. During the tenure of President Biden, the US signed with Ukraine an important document, that is, Charter on Strategic Partnership, which emphasized that the two countries will be guided by the Declaration of the Association of 2008 Bucharest Summit. In the end, all these actions led Russia to send troops to the border area and send an ultimatum to NATO and the US, demanding that NATO and the US must promise never to allow Ukraine to enter NATO. NATO and the US must also remove the military assets that NATO and the US have placed in Eastern Europe since 1997. We can understand that if NATO accepts that request, Russia will withdraw its troops, otherwise Russia will give Ukraine a lesson. Of course, this request was not accepted by NATO, and so what happened? We all saw a fierce war going on. Many American foreign policy experts have warned that NATO should not expand eastward. The US Department of Defense, Robert Gates, at the time of the Bucharest summit, realized that trying to bring Georgia and Ukraine into NATO is really overkill. At that summit, both the German Chancellor and the French President opposed moving toward NATO membership for Ukraine because they feared it would anger Russia. In general, if assessed objectively, the actions of the US and its NATO allies do not violate international law. All countries are independent, so they have the right to choose their actions, and it is not wrong to bring Ukraine into NATO. However, knowing that Ukraine is a country next to Russia and Russia does not want Ukraine to join NATO, even warning that, if NATO allows Ukraine to join, this country will not be safe. Knowing that, but NATO still gives the green light for Ukraine to join, it can be seen that the US has deliberately provoked Russia and left Ukraine in danger. Although it is not wrong in theory, but if it is for Ukraine, the US and NATO should not do this. Currently, Russia has invaded Ukraine, millions of people have to leave their homes, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure built over decades has been destroyed into rubble, thousands of innocent people have died. Even if the US stands together with the European Union in economic sanctions against Russia, providing Ukraine with medical supplies and weapons to fight Russia. And regardless of the outcome of this war, whether Ukraine will defeat Russia or lose to Russia, What we must certainly recognize is that Ukraine, Russia, Europe, the United States and the whole world are suffering, not in terms of human life, but also about economic. In general, this war causing damage to all parties is something that even the US does not want. So if the US initially decided to distance itself from Ukraine, and at best let Ukraine join an economic union, but never cooperate in the military field, it might have avoided the war. What is your opinion? Let's discuss in the comments section. Thank you for watching the video, goodbye and see you again.